ever stop and wonder if you could be related to everyone with your last name?
Just think if you're a Lincoln, how you'd be congratulated if Honest Abe were someone you could claim.
To clear up any mystery, just check your family history.
Genealogy's the name of the game. Now some ancestors you'll find you want to hide,
but most of them will fill your heart with pride.
Oh, your family tree, your family tree. Check your genealogy, find who was who and how who came to be. On your family tree.
Welcome, listeners. It's time for the Genealogy Radio Show, the show that's keeping you in the loop. Today's show is about Laois and Offaly, Queen's County and King's County, and we're going to look at the geographical aspects related to both and how this impacts on those doing genealogical and Irish ancestral research. I'm going to start with County Laois, and you may remember the first show of our series, Clans and Surnames, referred a lot to Laois and the wonderful book written by my colleague at UCC, Dr. Michael Christopher Keane, From Laois to Kerry, which related to the transplantation of the famous 7 clans from Laois to Kerry. You can get that particular show on podcast, and also the book is on sale. Now, so back to Laois. In the famous topographical dictionary by Samuel Lewis of 1837, he described it as, quote, an inland county of the province of Leinster, bounded on the east by the counties of Kildare and Carlow, on the north by the King's County, which is Offaly, and on the west by the same and Tipperary County, and on the south by the counties of Kilkenny and Carlow. It comprises of an area, according to the Ordnance Survey, of 396,810 acres, of which 335,838 acres are cultivated land. So just 60,972 are unprofitable mountain and bog. This is a clue as to why Queen's County or Laois was so lucrative, as it was almost 85% cultivated land. The county, quote, is partly in the diocese of Killaloe, partly in those of Dublin and Glendalough, partly in that of Kildare, but chiefly in those of Ossory and Leyland. For the purpose of civil jurisdiction is divided into the baronies of Ballyadams, Cullina, Maryborough East, Maryborough West, Portnahinch, Shamarg, Tradbally, Tinnahinch and Upper Ossory. It contains the greater part of the borough and market town of Portarlington, the disfranchised borough market and assize town of Maryborough, the ancient corporate and market and post town of Balnakill. And a lot of these names you may not be familiar with, so 1837 source of Samuel Lewis is absolutely excellent for genealogical researchers because it'll give you a clue if your ancestors emigrated around those 1830s time. You'll be able to trace them back to these places because it's a very useful source indeed for that. I was interested to find that Samuel Lewis referred to the, quote, 42 stations of the Constabulary Police, having a force of sub-inspector, 9 chief officers, 45 sub-constables, 291 men, 15 horses, and there were 3 stations of the Peace Preservation Police. So, quite a well-policed area, and Ireland was the most policed country in the world in the 19th century. The district lunatic asylum for the Queen's and King's County, both Laois and Offaly, Westmeath and Longford, was at Maryborough, and that was also the county infirmary as well. So, very interesting source there. All this is essential information and available online free of charge at the Ask About Ireland site, and also on an online library source, www.libraryireland.com. So you would get many valuable source books on that site free of charge. Samuel Lewis lived from 1782 to 1865, so he was 83 years of age when he died, and he was the editor and publisher of topographical dictionaries and maps of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The aim of the text was to give, in a, quote, condensed form, a faithful and impartial description of each place. The firm of Samuel Lewis and Co. was based in London. Samuel Lewis the Elder died in 1865, and his son of the same name predeceased him in 1862. This is in genealogy Decessit Vita Patron, died in the lifetime of the father, DVP. So you often see this on pedigree charts, and that's what it means. Unfortunately, it's where your children don't outlive you. But if you look at Samuel Lewis the Elder, he was 83, and in the 19th century, where mortality would not be as high as today, that would have been phenomenal. So first published in 1837 in 2 volumes with accompanying atlas, it marks a new and significant higher standard in such accounts of Ireland. Apart from the Parliamentary Gazetteer of Ireland, published in 1845, it has not been superseded. In the 1837 preface, it was noted that the numerous county histories and local description of cities, towns and districts of England and Wales rendered the publication of their former works in comparison an easy task. So in Ireland, the extreme paucity of such works imposed the necessity of great assiduity in the personal survey and proportionately increased the expense. So it was an awful lot more expensive to do this Samuel Lewis topographical dictionary, taking into account. Lewis for Laois and Queen's County today relied on the information provided by local contributors and the earlier works published, such as Coote's Statistical Survey of 1801, Taylor and Skinner's maps of the roads of Ireland in 1777, Pigot's Trade Directory in 1824. He also used parliamentary reports, the censuses of 1831, which were in survival at that time, so you can get extracts for that. And local contributors were given the proof sheets for final comment and revision. The names of places are those in use before the publication of the Ordnance Survey Atlas of 1838, and distance are in Irish miles. The statute mile is 0.62 of an Irish mile, so almost 2/3 of an Irish mile. The dictionary gives a unique picture of Ireland before the Great Famine. So it tells us all about our counties, shires and liberties. So why is Laois called Queen's County? And I have to say here, it's one of my favourite counties along with Offaly. It's absolutely fabulous. Well, Queen's was established as a naming pattern after Bloody Mary, Mary Tudor, who reigned in the middle of the 1550s. And she was called Bloody Mary not after tomatoes, which makes up the alcoholic drink, but because she was very fond of burning heretics. And it was very interesting to find that Queen's, the name of it was also established in New York as one of the counties in 1683, as one of the original 12 counties. And that was named after the Portuguese princess Catherine of Braganza, Queen of England, Scotland and Ireland. But our Queen for Laois, or Queen's County, was a century earlier, and it was shired in 1556 by Queen Mary. She was King Henry VIII's eldest daughter, married to Philip of Spain, and she was the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, the wife that Henry spurned to marry Anne Boleyn. She succeeded her brother, and Laois became known as Queen's County, converging the countries of Leix, Slumarg, Larry and parts of Glimnallery on the south-west of the River Barrow. Laois received its present Irish language name following the Irish War of Independence, and it's often spelt Leix. Port Laois, previously Maryborough, is the county town. So the Great Famine devastated the county. The county's workhouses could not cope with the number of destitute people. And of course you have the workhouse opening in Donaghmore in 1853, but many of the poorest had emigrated and died at this stage. The county, formerly known as Queen's County, Conte on Banriona was until its name was informally changed on the establishment of the Irish Free State in 1922. Despite the county's name being upheld as Laois through the 2001 Local Government Act, no legislation was ever enacted after independence explicitly changing its name, so you do see some acts which continue to have legal effect. Where land is sold in the county, some of the relevant title deeds are still updated as being in Queen's County. The county is landlocked and uniquely does not border any county which touches the coast, so this is known as being doubly landlocked. It's therefore considered to be one of the most landlocked counties in Ireland, and it is, as I say, one of my favourite. Now, we're going to move on to Offaly, because it's quite important that we cover this today as well. But I would also like to refer to some of the sources. The Laois Heritage Site was very, very useful, and it had a wonderful account of the famine in Ireland, and I'm going to put that up online as part of a blog. King's County of Offaly, well, that was after Mary Tudor's husband, Philip II of Spain. So it tells you it was done around the same time, around 1556. And this territory was originally the northern part of an ancient kingdom of Ella or Ely and was controlled by the Gaelic Irish O'Carroll clan. The rest of Ella was divided between fellow Dalcatian septs, which included the O'Spillans, the O'Fogartys, the O'Mahers, and it was controlled at some stage by a rival Ogonots of Cashel. However, the English Reformation led to the disintegration of ancient Gaelic, Irish and Old English dynasties who refused to renounce their religion, and the O'Carroll clan served the Butlers during both Cromwellian and Williamite wars, which both ended in defeat. So they were on the losing side. The O'Carrolls held on for a lot longer than some of the others in some cases. They survived intact until that time, but they lose out very badly because of being on the wrong side in the wars. So the King's County was planted with English settlers beginning in the 16th century. In 1620, Birr Castle, a stronghold of the O'Carrolls, became the seat of the Parsons dynasty, who later became the Earls of Ross. They were given a baronetcy of Birr in 1677, and they gave their name to Parsonstown, now known as Birr. The famous Leviathan, for a time the world's largest telescope, still exists from the garden of the castle, and the castle is still owned by descendants of the Parsons family. So Parsonstown, the Parsons baronetcy of Birr Castle, all became part of that Charles II Restoration Ireland phase, and you had a new nobility. So instead of the Carrolls, you were looking at a new elite. From the 17th century, the Gaelic Irish were reduced to the status of tenants and landless peasants on their ancestral lands. Members of the O'Carroll clan were given new lands in Maryland, and a descendant, James Carroll of Carrolltown, was the sole Catholic signatory of the American Declaration of Independence. So the Carrolls aren't forgotten at all and make fine tracks in other centuries, in other countries. County Offaly, formerly known then as King's County, was part of High Laois, which included the modern day county of Laois. So the part encompassing County Offaly or King's County was called High Valley or Offalia. The southern part of the county was part of Ely O'Carroll, and that's really important to remember as well. So lesser clans or septs included the O'Malone, the McCaughlan, O'Flaherty, O'Rigney, O'Mooney, O'Hennessy, McColgan, O'Fallon, O'Bergen, O'Malloy, O'Houlihan, O'Flanagan, O'Dooley, O'Bannon, Guilfoyle, McCorcoran and O'Riordan. So not all names that you associate with Kerry and other places and Limerick and that originate there. In their 17th century root, you can really find them elsewhere. 25 most common names in Offaly: Kelly, Dunn, Egan, Malloy, Carroll, Daly, Kennedy, Ryan, Walsh, Mooney, Connor, Byrne, Maher, Horan, Quinn, Delaney, Murray, Kenny, Larkin, Flanagan, Farrell, Scully, Murphy, so on. So much of Offaly is covered by one of Western Europe's largest inland bogs. Clara Bog and the Great Bog of Allen covers Offaly and neighbouring County Laois. These two counties were both among the first counties planted by English settlers in the 16th century. So Laois was called Queen's County and Offaly King's County. However, their names reverted to the Irish after the establishment of the Free State in 1922. The county town of Offaly is Tullamore, an attractive market town in the centre of Offaly. The Earls of Charleville designed its picturesque buildings in the mid-1700s, and you have Tullamore whisky, which has been distilled in the town since the 16th century. On the western borders of King's County, overlooking the River Shannon, is Clonmacnoise, one of the most beautiful and religious sites of early Christian Ireland. This river intersection was one of the most important inland routes of Ireland, known as the Highway of Kings. Clonmacnoise was founded by St. Kieran in the year 544 AD and consists of a round tower church, high crosses and some of the finest examples of ancient grave slabs in Ireland. And it is with great pleasure that we actually run the Family History Club at the County Arms Hotel in Birr of the last Tuesday of the month. We've started this in October and our next date will actually be the 29th of November. So if you want more details on that, you may contact me on same. Just a little bit going back to the O'Carrolls or the Kirvilles, simply known as Carroll. We're not maybe familiar with using the O in front of it, but that O was dropped later on. So you find that it may seem unfamiliar, but the O becomes dropped, it's taken up, it's dropped, and so on. The Carrolls are a very interesting Gaelic Irish clan because they are the most prominent sept in Offaly, and their genealogies claim that they are kindred and that they are led by the McCarthys. During the Middle Ages until the 16th century, the family ruled that Ely O'Carroll area. There's massive links between the O'Carrolls and the McNamara's, linkages of marriage. And actually, one of the O'Carrolls marries the McNamara's, and they are transplanted and transported into slavery in 1650. In the early 1650s under the Cromwellian conquest, so they end up in Barbados. Now, a celebrated king of Ossory was Kerval, who gave his name to the Ossory O'Carrolls. He was also very close to the Norse and the Vikings, so it's very interesting that he features in many medieval Icelandic pedigrees through his daughters, giving the family and the Carrolls a unique celebrated genealogical position in Northern Europe. I'm going to find it very hard to pronounce this now. It's Kjarval Ikanur, a figure in the Norse saga, so sorry for massacring that, and they appear as an ancestor of the many prominent Icelandic families, and they're identified with Kerbal. So it's not surprising that one of the Carrolls should have commissioned a work in which his most illustrious ancestor was portrayed in a heroic light, and it's less obvious why Kerbal in particular should have such a prominent place in Icelandic sagas and in the genealogies of the founding families of Iceland. It does show you, though, the intersections genealogically between the Vikings and the Irish and the Gaelic Irish and so on. So it's really important that we do explore that the Vikings become merged and so on. They're not separate and they become assimilated and absorbed in both ways. So we have a very interesting account of that, and one of the things that we need to look at some of the facts about Offaly or Kings County is that in 1821 the population was 131,088. It increased to a whopping 146,857 in 1841, but then it began to decrease and it was 52,592 in 1926. In 2006, the population was 20,000 higher, just 18,000 higher at 70,868. So it never ever reached, it was double that in pre-famine times. Now, just to let you know, to finish off, about our wonderful Clans and Surnames event, which is being held in Neenah in County Tipperary, a must for those researching Irish roots. And we'll be looking a lot at places such as Queen's County and Kings County. We have our early bird, which is available till the 31st of December. And clansandsurnames.com promises to be a wonderful week of research, field trip, classes and lectures and conference paper. We have a call for papers at the moment and welcome abstracts on family history topics. And so if you submit 200 words to me, that is absolutely great. And I'll post the links and so on. The show today will be podcast after and put up online. And I hope it's given you some information on Laois and Offaly and why they're called Queen's County and Kings County, because that's the names you'll come across them as when you're looking up in the 1901 and 1911 census, and it can be very confusing at a boundary level. So fascinating counties, fascinating heritage sites, and very, very good historical organisations working there as well. So with that, I'll leave you for today, and you can tune in at www.rcb.ie. Pick us up on Facebook, RCB Radio, and Twitter, Radio CB. That's all for today. Thank you.
Did you ever stop and wonder if you could be related to everyone with your last name?
Just think if you're a Lincoln, how you'd be congratulated if Honest Abe were someone you could claim.
To clear up any mystery, just check your family history.
Genealogy's the name of the game. Now some ancestors you'll find you want to hide,
but most of them will fill your heart with pride.
Oh, your family tree, your family tree. Check your genealogy, find who was who and how who came to be. On your family tree.